in New Jersey. So I thank you, Nagist, and we're going to go ahead. Tahir, how you doing, brother? Well, we got to get you unmuted.
What's going on? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Is that your little girl?
It is. It's Ava.
Hi.
Hey, hi.
How are you?
Are you?
Well, other one's not paying attention, so we got
I got you.
one of them.
I got you. Awesome. Well, guys, if you don't know who this is, this gentleman is Tahir Johnson, and I'm going to let him share his story in a second. But I met Tahir at the Black Cannabis Conference down in New Orleans a couple of years ago. And when I first heard about him, he was described as, the guy that went to Howard. And I kept laughing because I was like, wait a minute. If you didn't know, I went to Hampton University, and there's a natural rivalry between the two schools. But at that event, we were talking trash, and then we got a chance to talk after the event. And I started to see that he was one of those people that got it. He came from a background and got it. And I realized at that conference that there are people in this space. I didn't know many of them at the time. You were one of the first that I met that really were thinking above just getting a dispensary. Even though that's what you've been able to do, you were thinking in terms of the industry and the industry being good, kind of like myself, because I always viewed it, why the heck do I want to enter an industry that sucks? Why do I want to walk into something knowing that I'm going to get beat down? So, this gentleman is the owner of Simply Pure in Trenton, New Jersey. And I'm going to go ahead and get him started here. And man, let's start with your backstory. Can you kind of explain what you were doing before you got involved in cannabis and how you came to that point?
Sure thing. And Paul, good to see you, man. If I would have known you was going to say that, I wouldn't have wore this color blue, man. I would have made sure.
That's why I said it. I mean, you got this sweatshirt on.
Oh man, in Virginia, I should have known better. But it's a pleasure to see all of y'all, and I appreciate the introduction. Like you said, yeah, man. My background and experience as being an HBCU alum, a Howard alum, has been really a core part of my professional, I think, identity. Both before and since I've been in cannabis. So prior to cannabis, I was an investment advisor. I was in wealth management. So I was focused on trying to help people with investing, financial planning, had all different types of wealthy clients, but also did a lot of focusing on financial literacy, trying to educate people of color on, finance. And so as I started learning about the cannabis industry, I saw first the different financial projections of what the industry was going to be, right? My first idea of legal cannabis in 2013, when I was working at Morgan Stanley, I saw GW Pharma, which was a pharmaceutical company, go public. And it made me kind of scratch my head this isn't the same type of, this isn't the same cannabis that that we were getting harassed for, and all what I had experienced. So it kind of made me interested in the industry. Still didn't get into it back then, but fast forward a little bit to 2018. I saw and read about my friend Hope Wiseman, who is in Maryland, youngest Black woman to own a dispensary in the country. She also had a background in finance. So that kind of made me look at it a little bit closer and realize, one, the way that my skills could help me get into the industry, but two, the way that I had always been focused on financial literacy and the need for social equity and things like that in the industry. I saw where my background could be one to help educate people and get into the industry. So I applied for licenses, medical licenses in 2019 in Maryland and in Jersey. So I grew up in Jersey, been living in DC since I went to Howard. So I applied for licenses in Maryland in 2019 in both places. Didn't win, but the whole time I got really active and passionate about advocacy because at that time I think there was a real shift. And I think when I first got into the industry, people weren't having conversations like they were now, right? The conversation was more oh, this is a big industry and business now, to make it seem as if people from our background couldn't be in. So I wanted to prove that wrong and also help make a change. And so I had the opportunity to start. I had the opportunity to start working at the National Cannabis Industry Association in 2019, and started their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, a number of different things. So for that time, I was really being intentional and active, because it was such a large organization. I was being intentional with trying to network, connect, and like build a huge network of like Black folks that wanted to be in the industry all over the country. And I also started my podcast, the Cannabis Diversity Report, which helped to, I think, put me on a lot of people's radars, because I was, again, having these conversations around diversity in cannabis. From NCIA transitioned over to Marijuana Policy Project and U.S. Cannabis Council, which really was an opportunity to, I think, level up again, because the type of companies I was working with and the type of I think the type of campaigns in the industry and things I was able to put together had more of a national impact. And that kind of, I think, again, it's just always been doing the work. And when I saw the cannabis be legalized in my home state in New Jersey, I knew that that was my opportunity. For one, I was super active in the legislative process, trying to like help shape the legislation to be what it is today. But I jumped out there and applied for a license. And thankfully, I was able to actually win and help one of my childhood friends win. So we won 2 of the first 11 dispensary licenses, of course, with Simply Pure. Shout out to my girl, Wanda James, the founder of the original Simply Pure in Colorado. And what that brand represents and means is the first Black legally owned dispensary in the country. We're carrying that legacy. And yeah, man, excited, right? That's kind of like the whole story. It was using that background in finance to get in, because I was part of the team working on the license, and I quit that. I was so passionate about the industry. I quit the job in finance to go be a bud tender in 2019. That was kind of how I started learning the industry from the ground up. And here we are now, 4 years later.
Awesome, man. Let me ask you this, because you talked a lot about what you were doing with politics and trying to work with policy and organizations and helping people. Do you think all of those experiences, do you think you would still be where you are if you had not started gaining those ancillary bits of knowledge and information?
Not at all, man, because I'll say one of the things is, policy. What I've learned is, especially cannabis is so policy intensive. If you don't know and understand the rules, you can't navigate it. And as somebody who like lived and breathed cannabis policy like all day, 24 hours a day for the past 4 years, I got to really be fully immersed in it in a way that I think there really aren't too many people that have had the opportunity to do. And so it is because it was doing multiple things, right? Like focused on federal policy, being a part of MPP, which is like the lead organization in state policy. And then actually like being able to, like see up and close, like working with people like Nagist, who is brilliant, like so many people like that from all these companies. Like I got to learn something from every single person I was around, right? So it's like I spent time around, talk like the biggest and brightest folks from probably all the largest cannabis companies in the world, but also all of our minority folks that are like getting into the industry. Like I got to see and make friends with people that would be like, oh, I'm the first person in my state to get a license, or like the first woman, or first Black, or this or that, everywhere. And so like, as I was learning from all of these people, like as they were doing it, because I'm seeing it in real time, like, talking to like, experiencing that. So like I've had where I get to open up my first dispensary now, it's like I've already had 4 years of hands-on like training and learning. And so I also say that advocacy is important. I think advocacy and being active and conscious has been the biggest probably benefit to my career for sure.
I'm glad you share that, man, because I have always been encouraging people since we did our first boot camp cohort if I tell folks, if you want to get into this industry as an operator, as a business owner, you really need to get involved in policy. You really need to get involved in advocacy, because you'll start learning all the stuff you didn't know you were going to need to know, because you're getting in the right pool of information. And I'm really happy that you shared that, man, because I often get folks that want to get into the industry from all different backgrounds, Black, brown, white, Asian, purple. I get that a lot. People know about what we're doing and they reach out, but their response is, I don't want to do all of that. I just want to open the business, or I just want to get this license. And I explained to them, getting the license is just a lottery ticket. You got to go cash the ticket. You know what I'm saying? It's not like that license translates into money. So there's work that needs to be done. So let's talk about that, man. Like, you mentioned the application process, and you were fortunate to be carrying the Simply Pure name to the East Coast. But what has the application process been like? How would you describe that? Is that something where, okay, if I've been a welder and I've never wanted to fill out applications and forms, and I just decide I'm going to go get me a cannabis license, and I'm just going to go down to City Hall and ask for one of those applications and fill it out and pay my $250, get my business license for another $10, and I can go open a dispensary. You and I both know that is not what it's like. So can you describe the reality of that pathway? Because it really is different for everyone.
Yeah, and well, you'd be surprised, and I'm glad you say that, because some people really don't realize that. Something like, I might have somebody, like people that might know me, be like, hey, oh, I see you got the dispensary. I want to apply for one of those. Shoot me the website. I'm about to go on there and apply real quick. And as soon as somebody says something like that, you know they haven't kind of done the homework or understood. If somebody approaches me like that, I'm like, oh, okay, here's the link. Go ahead. And then, like, see it, like, right, in all seriousness. But it really was it probably is the most intensive, certainly the most intensive thing I've ever done. One of the things I can say is that this time around, and I think in a lot of places, there's a real emphasis on trying to make sure that the process is excuse me one second. And the process is one where it has limited barriers. Oh man, somebody put a whoopee cushion in my chair. Has limited barriers of entry. And so it's been completely different from. So the times when I applied for the licenses in 2019, there weren't social equity elements as heavily, right? And it was competitive, right? So it was scored. Like when I applied in Maryland, it was hundreds of people applied, and it was like 4 cultivation licenses, 10 processing licenses. Versus New Jersey, some of the things that they did to like lower barriers to entry and make it more accessible. First was given so it starts with knowing and understanding the landscape, right? This is why the policy stuff is so important. You got to know what's in it, right? Like, what are you actually doing? And in this case, in New Jersey, some of the most important things were ways to get priority, like in the application. First and foremost was social equity, people who had previous cannabis charges or came from a economically disadvantaged zip code. Being that I had previous cannabis charges, that helped me to qualify for social equity. The other was that if you were like a diverse business, so like minority-owned business, woman-owned business, disabled veteran, and we were minority-owned business, so got the qualification on those. Also, if you were in an impact zone, communities that have been most harmed by the war on drugs, that was another thing. Oh, I see. Yeah, there you go, sweetie. Okay, go watch it.
I don't know what to do.
Okay. So like if you were in a zip code that had been one of the places that were most impacted, that also gave you priority points. So it's understanding how to tell that story, but then on top of that, you have to have a business plan. I was lucky to build relationships with suppliers. Shout out to my girl Nagist. Again, I was able to get wholesale agreements with companies like Columbia Care to show that I can have products on my shelves. Because another thing people often don't say, when you have a dispensary, it's not like you're selling weed that you grew in your garage, right? Or like I can't go to the weed man on the block and be like, give me a pound. Like you have to go, you can only deal with licensed legal operators in your state. So it's building those relationships. And then talk about advocacy and the way all those relationships came into play, right, over those years. Now, when I'm entering the market, I'm going to people and companies that I've been building relationships with for years. So the advocacy was critical to that. Again, business plan, having insurance, security plan, choosing the location and getting the location was probably the toughest part, right? Because you have so many towns that are opted out altogether, and they're not allowing you to have businesses there. But then there's also limited opportunities there. I had to have my hometown. My hometown was able to gave me approval to open up there, and they were only given authorization to 3 different businesses to be in a town. So you have to show that you're the best person to come in there, right? That you're going to do the job right. You're going to follow the rules. You're going to give back to the community. All that is significant. You have to hire people, man, so many steps. The money, right? The money. That's the other thing in acquiring the real estate, right? Because cannabis is federally illegal. I can't go to a bank and say, hey, I want to buy this building, give me a mortgage, right? And because of the zoning, you can only be in specific places. So acquiring the real estate was really critical, as well as raising the actual money for the business. And so you see a lot of people were able to get the conditional license because to get the first step, one of the things that they did to make it easier, they didn't require you to show that you had the money or the location or any of those things. They just wanted, if people wanted to be in the industry, and you could do, it was an insurance plan. It was like actually having a registered business. And what was the other one? It was something minimal. But now to actually open a business, you got to show you have the money, like all of these things. And so thankfully, we were able to do that. I had to raise capital. And that's where I think my background as an investment advisor came into play, because especially in times now where the economy's messed up, right? Like cannabis investments have not been the best. So people want to work with somebody that they can feel confident is going to be a good steward of their money. For me to have somebody hand over $750,000, and trust me with it to build this business, and also do $1 million real estate acquisition, right? We're talking about almost $2 million, right? So having somebody trust me to give that type of capital and raise equity was something, that was really the toughest part, and probably the thing that really keeps so many people out, to be honest.
I totally agree with you, man. I'm glad you shared that in that way, because I think that is the missing piece to a lot of people's hopes and dreams about getting into the industry, is understanding the capital and the capital exposure. And like I tell my boot campers, as was told to me years ago, money always chases opportunity.
That, and then not even just when you get the opportunity too, it's even negotiating the deal, right? Because
exactly,
there's like, for one, there wasn't a lot of money out here. Like if you're looking for if you're trying to go to people that are going to, let's just say if you want to, like, you might think you can get a loan, but when you go to those businesses first, like again, it's not banks. It's like, for one, as minorities, there's already so much less access to like investment banks and venture capital. Yes. And when you go to those people, they want to know, how much revenue are you producing? What's your track record? And if you don't have one, guess what? You're not going to get the money. So it comes from, without personal wealth and resources, you have to really be selling your business that somebody, again, that their investment is a good thing. But I also had people, the first person that I came across, I had somebody offer me $2.5 million, but they were like, they wanted the majority control of the business. They wanted the ownership. Like, you know what I'm saying? So this dream that I've been working on, I'm supposed to give it away. Like, again, you'll encounter everything in this situation, and all money's not good money. So it's like, even negotiating it, man, that took an attorney, right? It wasn't me. Like, I had a law firm. My law firm bill, I just looked at this, like, over the course of from March to now, it's probably like $30,000, right? And that's just the lawyer. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you're not prepared to play and do and have all of these things, that's the other thing. You really can't, even though the actual submitting applying for the license was $200 now, $800 to accept the license, all the other things you have to be prepared to do is costly. And that was even with me having so much skill, and I was able to do a lot on my own and not have to do so much on the outside, but it was still expensive and a lot of work. And so it's about the money.
It really is, man. And I love the fact that you shared that, because I emphasized that. And we talked about that earlier in today's conversation when I opened up talking about how, as a business owner trying to get into this cannabis industry, the investor wants to see that you got some skin in the game. If you can walk away from the project and you're not scarred in any way, an investor is not writing you a check. They don't want any parts of it because they have been burned before. You know, people don't realize a venture capitalist firm may fund 12 things that year and 9 of them fail.
Right.
You know, 9 of them fail on a regular basis. So they're taught and trained how to evaluate you failing. So they're looking for all the stuff that has shown a sign of you having a strong opportunity. Like you said, your background. If you don't have a background like Tahir, you need to go find some people to be in your mastermind at your table, representing your interests, who help you guide through that process, that may have more of that expertise.
And that's what I'll add too. You can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. Like it's me. Like, I think, of course, everybody knows me and they see me, but I have a team. Like my advisor that works with, we've been working together since I first applied for a license in 2019. He has a 20-year background as an entrepreneur, real, like, commercial real estate developer, and not just regular real estate, like alternative energy. This dude was like building wind turbines. So he understands like how to like navigate regulatory things and do business plans and really like a lot of what I've been working on has been the construction of real estate acquisition, and he handles all of that stuff. Like, hell, like, I don't know anything about construction. His wife, who helps me, is an attorney. She's a regulatory attorney, and she was a national organics inspector. So she understands like those things. So like, again, I have people that help me. I have law firm, more than one law firm. I have, all these different things. It's a team.
Dad,
yes. Oh no, it's okay, sweetheart. Yes, I will.
I'm almost done with your dad. I'm gonna let you get back to Saturday with the fam. But man, what you just said is spot on, man, because I call it a mastermind. You got to have a group of people that you can sit down with on a phone call and be like, this is what just popped up, and you get all that contribution so you can make a solid decision. And that right there, guys, for those of you that are interested in getting into this industry and this business, that is so important from the beginning, because if you don't put those people in place and build those relationships before you get into the heat of battle of negotiating, you end up missing stuff that you should be catching because you're not in a place where you got a solid relationship and they're not watching your back because you haven't been having all these conversations and they don't know all your interests and what's motivating you. So, man, Tahir.
Well, I'll tell you too, I will add to that also, and I think that's important, like the experience matters. And that was why I chose to go the route and Simply Pure and working with Wanda too, right? Because I had some people of that, like, you Tahir, you got all this in the industry, you didn't like, but Wanda has been in this game since 10 years, right? Like that experience, everything I could want to learn, have to do, like, been there already, done it. So there's, value in that. Yeah, build that mastermind, man. You gotta have it. That's critical.
You have to. And for those of you that don't know the Wanda that he's talking about, Wanda James out in Colorado, you can Google her. She's on the cover of magazines. Sure, you Google Wanda in California weed, her picture went up because of what she's been able to do. And understand, I saw her talk when I was in New Orleans, and she had a mastermind. And for you to have her as part of yours is phenomenal, because she didn't have that same type of situation. And to hear her tell the story about how the Drug Enforcement Agency came in and raided her place after she had been legally functioning, and how, because she had an attorney and she had political relationships and all that stuff, that's why that stuff was able to be corrected, because they knew she was solid. But if you don't go down that path, getting those relationships in place in the beginning, guys, it makes it real hard. So to hear, I see we ran over time because I love this conversation. I love this conversation. And we definitely got to get you back on for a future event and keep up with how things are progressing for you, man. And I wish you the best. Look forward to seeing you later on this year. And definitely we'll be seeing you during the football season. And it's a good time, man. But
I bet you will. Yep. Hey,
I wish
appreciate
you,
you, man. And just before I go, I don't see him on here, but I got to say, shout out to my young brother, Breon Case, man. So proud of him and this stuff he's doing, man. You know, and thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much. Prosperity, good health, and peace to you, brother. Have fun with your family today. Take care.
Yep. Bye.
All right, guys. I hope you had a chance to take some notes there because that was a very real conversation.